The rushing waters of the Sacramento River roared with vengeance on that fateful spring afternoon in 1873, swollen from the melting mountain snow and 3 days of relentless rain. Olivia Anderson clutched the reins of her panicked horses as her wagon teetered precariously at the edge of the rickety wooden bridge connecting the outlying farms to Chico, California. One wheel had already slipped off the rain-soaked planks, and she could feel destiny hanging by a thread as thin as a spider's silk. Isaac Norton witnessed the disaster unfolding from 50 yards away. He had been riding toward town after 2 weeks on the range, his cattle drive complete and his pockets finally full of hard-earned money. The moment he spotted the young woman's wagon beginning to slide, he spurred his horse forward, heart pounding against his ribs like a hammer on anvil. "Hold on." He shouted, though the wind and rushing water surely swallowed his words before they reached her ears. The horses reared in terror as the bridge gave another sickening creak. Olivia tried to calm them, but it was too late. The structure had suffered too much damage from the deluge. With a tremendous crack that echoed across the valley, the bridge collapsed beneath her, sending the wagon plummeting into the churning waters below. Isaac didn't hesitate. He leaped from his horse, tore off his gun belt, and sprinted to the river's edge. The wagon had hit the water with a tremendous splash, immediately beginning to sink as the current caught it. He could see Olivia inside, struggling against the force of the water now pouring through the wagon's canvas cover. Without a second thought, Isaac dove into the frigid waters. The shock of cold nearly paralyzed him, but he forced his limbs to move, swimming powerfully toward the rapidly sinking wagon. The current was vicious, threatening to sweep him downstream, but years of breaking wild horses had given him strength that wouldn't yield easily. Olivia had managed to free herself from the driver's seat, but her skirts were tangled in the wooden frame of the wagon. Water was filling the interior rapidly as she struggled to break free. Panic surged through her veins, but something deep within refused to let her surrender to the river's deadly embrace. "I'm coming," Isaac shouted as he reached the wagon, his voice barely audible above the roar of the water. He grasped the side of the vehicle, using it to anchor himself against the current while he reached for her. Their eyes met for the first time, her wide blue eyes filled with terror, his determined hazel ones promising salvation. He extended his hand and she grasped it like it was her only tether to this world. "The water's rising," she cried out, her voice strained with fear. "I'm caught." Isaac took a deep breath and ducked beneath the surface. The murky water made it nearly impossible to see, but his fingers worked by touch, finding where her dress had become entangled with the wagon's frame. He tugged hard, feeling the fabric tear. With one final wrench, he freed her from the death trap just as the wagon lurched downward, surrendering to the river's pull. Breaking the surface, he kept a firm grip on Olivia's hand. "Swim with me," he commanded, and together they battled the current, fighting their way toward the riverbank. The journey to shore seemed eternal. Olivia's strength began to fail as the cold sapped her energy and her waterlogged clothes weighed her down. Sensing her flagging power, Isaac wrapped one arm around her waist, using the other to cut through the water. "Don't give up," he urged, his breath coming in short gasps. "We're almost there." When they finally reached the muddy bank, Isaac dragged Olivia from the water's clutches, both of them collapsing onto the sodden earth. They lay there, chests heaving, the rain still pelting their faces as they stared up at the gray sky. "You saved my life," Olivia whispered when she finally found her voice. Isaac turned to look at her, raindrops clinging to his eyelashes. "Couldn't let you become one with the river. It's a mite cold for swimming today." A shaky laugh escaped her lips, a sound of relief, of life affirming itself in the face of death. "I'm Olivia Anderson," she said, extending a trembling hand. "Isaac Norton," he replied, taking her cold fingers in his. "Pleased to make your acquaintance, Miss Anderson, though I wish it had been under drier circumstances." That moment with mud caking their clothes, river water streaming from their hair, and their bodies shivering uncontrollably was the beginning of something neither of them could have anticipated when they awoke that morning. But fate had always worked in mysterious ways in the wild lands of the West. Isaac helped Olivia to her feet, noticing how she winced when she put weight on her right ankle. "You're hurt," he observed, concern etching lines across his weathered face. "It's nothing," she insisted, but when she tried to take another step, her leg nearly buckled beneath her. Without asking permission, Isaac swept her into his arms. "My horse is just up the bank," he explained. "He's steady, he'll carry us both to town." Olivia wanted to protest. She'd been raised to be independent. After all, but the pain in her ankle and the bone-deep chill that had settled into her body silenced her objections. She allowed this stranger to carry her up the embankment to where his chestnut gelding waited patiently, as if rescuing drowning women was a regular occurrence for his master. With careful movements, Isaac helped Olivia onto the saddle before mounting behind her. He wrapped his arm securely around her waist, and she found herself leaning back against his chest, grateful for the warmth that radiated from him despite his soaked clothing. "What brings you to Chico?" he asked as they began the slow journey toward town, trying to distract her from the pain and shock. "I've come to take over my uncle's mercantile," she explained, her teeth chattering between words. "He passed away last month and left the business to me." "Henry Anderson was your uncle?" Isaac asked, surprise evident in his voice. Olivia nodded. "You knew him." Everyone in Chico knew Henry. He was a good man, fair prices, honest weights, and he'd extend credit to those who needed it during hard times. Isaac paused, considering. He never mentioned family back east. "We weren't close," Olivia admitted. "My father, his brother, and he had a falling out before I was born. It was a shock to receive the lawyer's letter saying Uncle Henry had left me everything." As they approached the outskirts of Chico, the rain finally began to ease. The town looked dreary in the gray afternoon light, but to Olivia, it represented safety and a new beginning, one that had nearly ended before it could start. "The doctor's office is this way," Isaac said, guiding his horse down the main street. Curious eyes followed them. A soaking wet man and woman on a single horse made quite the spectacle, even in a frontier town accustomed to unusual sights. Dr. Thomas Wilson was just about to close his office for the afternoon when Isaac knocked on his door. The physician took one look at the bedraggled pair and ushered them inside, clucking his tongue like a mother hen. "What in tarnation happened to you two?" he demanded as he helped Isaac ease Olivia onto an examination table. "Bridge collapsed," Isaac explained tersely. "Wagon went into the river." Miss Anderson was trapped inside. The doctor's eyes widened. "The North Bridge, been telling the town council for years it needed replacing." He turned his attention to Olivia. "Let's have a look at you, young lady, while Dr. Wilson examined Olivia's ankle and checked her for other injuries. Isaac stood awkwardly by the door, dripping river water onto the wooden floorboards. "You should go get dry, Mr. Norton," Olivia said, noting his discomfort. "You've done more than enough." Isaac shook his head. "I'll wait. Need to make sure you're settled somewhere safe." His stubborn insistence both annoyed and touched her. She'd come to California prepared to be entirely self-sufficient, yet here she was, depending on the kindness of a stranger. "Just a sprain, doctor," Wilson announced after completing his examination. "Bad one, though. You'll need to stay off it for at least a week, maybe two." He began wrapping her ankle tightly with bandages. "Any family in town?" "No," Olivia replied. "I've just arrived. I was supposed to take possession of my uncle's store and the rooms above it today." "Henry Anderson's place." The doctor nodded thoughtfully. "Good solid building, but you'll need help getting around for a while." Isaac cleared his throat. "I can take her to the mercantile and help her get settled," he offered. "And I reckon Mrs. Landry at the boarding house might be willing to check in on her regular like." Dr. Wilson looked at Isaac appraisingly. "That's mighty generous of you, Norton." "Miss Anderson, would that arrangement be acceptable to you?" Olivia hesitated. In Boston, allowing a man she'd just met to escort her to her new home would have been scandalous. But this wasn't Boston, and without Isaac's help, she'd likely be at the bottom of the Sacramento River. "Yes, thank you, Mr. Norton," she finally replied. "I would be most grateful." An hour later, properly bandaged and with a bottle of laudanum for the pain, Olivia found herself being carried once again, this time up the stairs to the living quarters above Anderson's general store. The lawyer who had handled her uncle's estate had sent the keys ahead, and Isaac retrieved them from the sheriff's office before bringing her to her new home. The rooms were sparse but clean, with simple, sturdy furniture and windows overlooking the main street. A layer of dust covered everything, evidence of the weeks the space had been empty since her uncle's passing. Isaac set her gently on a chair in the small kitchen. "I'll fetch your things from the river tomorrow," he said. "Might be able to salvage some of it if it didn't wash too far downstream." Olivia's face fell as she realized the full extent of her situation. "Everything I own was in that wagon," she whispered. "My clothes, my books, all my personal belongings." Isaac's expression softened. "Don't you worry, folks around here are good about helping neighbors in need. And the store below is full of goods, it's all yours now." He set about building a fire in the small stove, his movements efficient and practiced. Once he had a decent blaze going, he filled a kettle with water from a pitcher and set it to heat. "Tea will help warm you up," he said. "Then I'll fetch Mrs. Landry. She's a widow lady, runs the boarding house down the street. Kind soul. She'll help you get settled and bring you some proper clothes." Olivia watched him move around the kitchen, this man who had risked his life to save hers. He was tall and lean, with broad shoulders and strong hands. His dark hair, still damp from the river, curled slightly at the nape of his neck, and his hazel eyes seemed to shift between green and brown depending on how the light hit them. "Why did you do it?" she asked suddenly. Isaac paused, kettle in hand. "Do what? Jump into the river after me? You could have drowned." He set the kettle on the stove and turned to face her, his expression serious. "Couldn't just stand by and watch," he said simply. "Any decent man would have done the same." "I'm not sure that's true," Olivia replied, "but I'm grateful it was you who happened to be there." A knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Isaac opened it to reveal Sheriff Daniel Mills, hat in hand. "Heard about the bridge," the lawman said without preamble. "Wanted to check on the lady and get her statement." Isaac stepped aside to let him enter. "Miss Anderson, this is Sheriff Mills." The sheriff was a middle-aged man with a salt and pepper mustache and kind eyes that had seen their share of trouble. He nodded politely to Olivia. "Madam. Mighty glad to see you in one piece. Norton here has a reputation for heroics, but fishing ladies out of rivers is a new one even for him." "It was the bridge," Olivia explained. "It gave way beneath my wagon." "Been warning the town council about that bridge for months," the sheriff said, echoing the doctor's earlier sentiment. "Reckon they'll listen now. You planning to stay in Chico, Miss Anderson?" "Yes," she replied. "I've inherited my uncle's store." "Henry's niece?" The sheriff looked surprised. "Well, I'll be. He was a good man, your uncle. Town hasn't been the same without him." The kettle began to whistle, and Isaac busied himself making tea while Olivia answered the sheriff's questions about the accident. By the time they finished their conversation, Isaac had set 3 steaming cups on the small table. "I'll send some men to see if we can recover any of your belongings from the river," Sheriff Mills promised as he stood to leave. "And I'll inform the town council about the bridge, not that they didn't already know it needed replacing." After the sheriff departed, Isaac and Olivia sat in companionable silence, sipping their tea. The warmth of the stove and the hot drink had finally begun to chase away the chill from Olivia's bones. "I should go fetch Mrs. Landry," Isaac said eventually, setting down his empty cup. "You'll be needing help tonight, and I don't reckon it would be proper for me to stay." Olivia nodded, though part of her was reluctant to see him leave. He represented safety in this unfamiliar place, the only person she knew in a town full of strangers. "Will I see you again, Mr. Norton?" she asked. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "It's a small town, Miss Anderson." "I reckon our paths will cross again." He paused at the door. "And it's Isaac, if you don't mind. After sharing a swim in the Sacramento, I figure we can dispense with some formalities." "Then you must call me Olivia," she replied, returning his smile. "Olivia," he repeated, as if testing how the name felt on his tongue. "Rest well. Mrs. Landry will take good care of you until I return tomorrow." With that, he was gone, leaving Olivia alone in her uncle's now her apartment with only the crackling fire and her thoughts for company. She found herself replaying the events of the day, from the terrifying moment when the bridge collapsed to the strong arms that had pulled her from the river's grasp. Chico, California was not at all what she had expected. But then again, neither was the cowboy who had saved her life. True to his word, Isaac returned the next morning with Mrs. Landry, a plump, maternal woman in her 50s who clucked sympathetically over Olivia's predicament, and immediately took charge of making the apartment more comfortable. "You poor dear," she fussed, unpacking a bundle of clothing she'd brought. "To lose everything you own on your first day in town, but don't you worry, we take care of our own in Chico." Isaac stood awkwardly near the door, hat in hand. "I'm heading out to see what I can salvage from the river," he announced. "Some of the boys from the ranch are helping." "That's very kind," Olivia said, touched by the effort he was making on her behalf. "Least I can do." He nodded to Mrs. Landry. "I'll be back before sundown." After he left, Mrs. Landry helped Olivia bathe and change into borrowed clothes, a simple blue calico dress that was a bit too large but clean and comfortable. The older woman then set about cleaning the apartment, refusing Olivia's attempts to help. "You stay off that ankle like the doctor ordered," she insisted. "I've raised 6 children and buried 2 husbands. I know how to keep a house running." As she worked, Mrs. Landry shared the town gossip, bringing Olivia up to speed on the local personalities and histories. When she mentioned Isaac's name, Olivia couldn't help but show particular interest. "Isaac Norton, he's a good man," Mrs. Landry said approvingly. "Came to California about 5 years back, started as a ranch hand at the Double Bar, worked his way up to foreman. Owner's retiring soon, and word is Isaac might buy him out if he can raise the money." "Does he have family here?" Olivia asked, trying to sound merely curious. Mrs. Landry shook her head. "No kin that I know of, keeps to himself mostly, but he's always first to help when someone's in trouble." She gave Olivia a knowing look. "He's not spoken for, if that's what you're wondering." Olivia felt her cheeks grow warm. "I wasn't, of course not, dear," Mrs. Landry replied with a smile that suggested she didn't believe Olivia for a second. "Now, let me make us some lunch, you must be famished." By late afternoon, the apartment was spotless. A stew was simmering on the stove, and Mrs. Landry had given Olivia a thorough introduction to Chico society. When a knock came at the door, Mrs. Landry answered it to find Isaac standing there, his clothes muddy and his expression triumphant. "Found some of your things," he announced, holding up a sodden trunk. Behind him, 2 young cowboys carried additional items, a smaller chest and what appeared to be a crate of books. Olivia's face lit up. "Oh, I thought everything was lost." "River carried the wagon about half a mile downstream before it broke apart," Isaac explained, as he and his companions deposited the recovered items on the kitchen floor. "Most of your belongings got scattered, but we managed to find these. The books are pretty waterlogged, but they might dry out all right." Mrs. Landry immediately took charge, directing the men to open the trunks outside to let them drain, then bringing the contents in to be washed and dried. Much of Olivia's clothing was salvageable, though stained with river mud. Several books, while damp, could be saved by careful drying, and a few personal mementos, a locket containing her parents' portraits, a small porcelain figure, and some letters had survived their journey downstream. "I can't thank you enough," Olivia told Isaac as he prepared to leave that evening. "You've been extraordinarily kind to a complete stranger." "Not a stranger anymore," he pointed out. "Besides, I reckon you'd do the same for me. Jump into a raging river to save you?" She raised an eyebrow, a smile playing at her lips. "I'm not sure I'd be much help. I barely know how to swim." "Then it's fortunate I was the one who happened along," he replied, his eyes twinkling. "Though maybe swimming lessons should be in your future." Mrs. Landry, who had been bustling around hanging wet clothes by the stove, cleared her throat pointedly. "Mr. Norton, if you're free tomorrow, perhaps you could help Miss Anderson down to the store. She should really take inventory if she's planning to reopen." "I'd be happy to," Isaac said, "though I don't know much about running a mercantile." "Neither do I," Olivia admitted. "But I'm a quick learner." The next morning brought clear skies and warmer temperatures, as if nature was apologizing for its previous violence. Isaac arrived promptly at 9 o'clock, having already completed his morning chores at the ranch. He found Olivia dressed in one of her salvaged outfits, a green day dress that had been hastily mended and pressed by Mrs. Landry. "Ready to see your kingdom?" he asked, offering his arm for support. With Isaac's help, Olivia made her way down the narrow stairs to the store below. The space was dark and musty, having been closed since her uncle's death 6 weeks earlier. Isaac opened the shutters, letting sunlight stream through the large front windows, illuminating the dusty interior. Anderson's general store was larger than Olivia had expected, with shelves lining the walls and free-standing displays throughout the main floor. Every available space was filled with merchandise from dry goods and groceries to hardware, clothing, and household items. At the back, a counter ran the width of the store with a cash register at one end and a glass display case showing more valuable items like watches and jewelry at the other. "It's overwhelming," Olivia murmured, taking in the extent of her inheritance. "It's a gold mine," Isaac corrected her. "Best store in Chico. Your uncle built a solid business here." With Isaac's help, Olivia settled herself on a stool behind the counter and began examining the ledgers her uncle had kept. His handwriting was neat and precise, every transaction carefully recorded. "He was meticulous," she observed. "I can see exactly what he paid for everything and what he charged." "That was Henry," Isaac agreed, dusting off some nearby shelves. "Honest to a fault. Some merchants might take advantage of being the only store for miles, but he always charged fair prices." Olivia looked up from the ledgers. "You don't have to help clean, Mr. Norton." "Isaac, you've done more than enough already." "Got nothing pressing today," he replied with a shrug. "Cattle drive's done, and the ranch owner gave me a few days off." He paused, cloth in hand. "Unless you'd prefer I leave." "No," she said quickly, perhaps too quickly. "Your help is most welcome. I just don't want to impose further." "No imposition." He resumed his dusting. "I owe Henry a debt anyway. When I first came to Chico, I was broke and hungry. He gave me credit until I found work at the Double Bar. Said he had a good feeling about me." Olivia smiled. "It seems my uncle was a good judge of character." They spent the morning taking inventory, with Isaac climbing ladders to reach high shelves while Olivia recorded the items in a fresh ledger. By noon, they had only cataloged about a quarter of the store's contents. "This will take days," Olivia sighed, rubbing her temples. "Rome wasn't built in a day," Isaac replied philosophically, "and neither was Anderson's general store." He glanced at the clock on the wall. "Let's break for lunch." "The hotel dining room serves a decent meal." Olivia hesitated. "My ankle, I'll carry you," he said matter-of-factly, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. And so Olivia found herself being carried down the main street of Chico in the arms of Isaac Norton, cowboy and rescuer extraordinaire, drawing curious looks from townsfolk along the way. Rather than being embarrassed, she found herself enjoying the experience, especially the solid strength of his arms around her and the clean, masculine scent of him. The hotel dining room was busy with the lunchtime crowd, and their entrance caused quite a stir. Isaac ignored the stares and whispers, finding them a table near the window before setting Olivia carefully in her chair. "Word's gotten around about your river adventure," he explained as he took his seat across from her. "Not much happens in Chico that doesn't become everyone's business by sundown." "I'm beginning to realize that," Olivia replied, noticing the not-so-subtle glances being cast their way. "In Boston, one could maintain a certain anonymity even while living in the city. Here, I've been in town 2 days and already feel like a local curiosity." "It'll pass," Isaac assured her. "Next week, someone else will do something interesting and you'll be yesterday's news." The waitress who approached their table, a young woman with auburn hair and a friendly smile, clearly didn't share Isaac's prediction. "Mr. Norton," she greeted him warmly before turning to Olivia. "And you must be Miss Anderson. The whole town's talking about how Mr. Norton here pulled you from the river. Very heroic." She beamed at Isaac, who looked distinctly uncomfortable with the praise. It wasn't as dramatic as people are making it sound, he muttered. Not what Sheriff Mills says, the waitress countered. He says if you hadn't been there, Miss Anderson would have drowned for certain. Olivia saw Isaac's discomfort and decided to change the subject. What do you recommend for lunch? She asked the waitress. The beef stew is fresh today, the young woman replied. Comes with biscuits and apple pie for dessert. That sounds perfect, Olivia said. 2, please. After the waitress departed, Olivia studied Isaac's face. You really don't like being called a hero, do you? He shrugged, looking out the window. Don't see the point in making a fuss. Did what anyone would do. That's not true, Olivia insisted. Most people would have gone for help, not jumped into a raging river. You risked your life, Isaac. His eyes met hers, their hazel depths serious. When I saw that Wagon go in with you inside, there wasn't any choice to make. It was just something I had to do. He paused, seeming to search for words. Like breathing or blinking, wasn't heroic, was just necessary. Something shifted in Olivia's chest at his words, a warmth that had nothing to do with the cozy dining room. Before she could respond, their stew arrived, steaming hot and fragrant. As they ate, the conversation turned to lighter topics. Isaac told her about the Double Bar Ranch where he worked, and she shared stories of her life in Boston, where she had taught at a small ladies' academy before receiving news of her inheritance. Teaching suits you, Isaac observed. You have a way of explaining things clearly. Olivia smiled, pleased by the compliment. I enjoyed it, though the pay was modest. This opportunity, the store, it's a chance at real independence. Few women get such chances. Your uncle must have thought highly of you to leave you everything, Isaac said. That's just it, he didn't know me at all, Olivia replied. His letter, the one the lawyer delivered with the will, said only that he had no children of his own and didn't want his brother's child to struggle as he had when he was young. She toyed with her napkin. It feels strange, inheriting from a man I never met. Henry didn't do things without reason, Isaac said. If he left you the store, he must have believed you were the right person to carry on his legacy. Their lunch concluded with slices of apple pie that lived up to the waitress's praise. When Isaac insisted on paying, Olivia didn't argue, sensing it mattered to him to do this small thing for her. The afternoon passed quickly as they continued the inventory. Isaac proved to be a knowledgeable assistant, familiar with the tools and hardware that Olivia couldn't identify. By the end of the day, they had cataloged about half the store's contents, and Olivia had a better understanding of what she had inherited. It's a viable business, she concluded as they reviewed the day's work. With some updating and perhaps a few new product lines, I believe I can make it successful. Isaac nodded approvingly. You've got a good head for business. Henry would be pleased. Over the next week, a routine developed. Isaac would arrive at the store each morning, help Olivia down the stairs, and they would work together until evening. Mrs. Landry continued to visit daily, bringing meals and helping with Olivia's laundry while providing a steady stream of town gossip. Other townspeople began stopping by, curious about the new proprietor of Anderson's General Store and when it might reopen. Olivia's ankle improved gradually, and by the end of the week, she could put weight on it for short periods. Dr. Wilson, who checked on her progress, pronounced himself satisfied with her recovery. Another week and you should be able to manage without assistance, he told her, though you'll want to avoid standing for long periods initially. The news was bittersweet for Olivia. While she was eager to regain her independence, she had grown accustomed to Isaac's daily presence. Their working relationship had evolved into something deeper, a friendship marked by easy conversation, shared laughter, and lingering glances that sometimes hinted at something more. On Saturday evening, as they finished the inventory at last, Olivia found herself reluctant to see him go. I'm planning to reopen the store on Monday, she told him as he prepared to leave. Just for a few hours each day at first, until my ankle is fully healed. That's good news, he said, though she thought she detected a note of hesitation in his voice. The town's been missing having a proper mercantile. Will you come to the opening? She asked, trying to keep her tone casual. I'd like to, he replied, but I need to get back to the ranch. Been away too long already. The owner's been patient, but there's work piling up. Of course, Olivia said, hiding her disappointment. You have your own responsibilities. You've been incredibly generous with your time already. Isaac shifted his weight, hat in hand, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. Miss Anderson, Olivia, I was wondering if you might consider joining me for dinner tomorrow night at the hotel as a proper thank you for your help, she added hastily. His face brightened. I'd be honored. But it should be me thanking you, not the other way around. For what? She asked, genuinely puzzled. For giving me a reason to wake up smiling these past days, he said simply. The words hung in the air between them, honest and unadorned. Olivia felt her cheeks warm, but she held his gaze. Then it's settled, she said softly. Dinner tomorrow. After Isaac left, Olivia sat alone in her apartment, her thoughts a whirlwind. In just over a week, Chico had begun to feel like home, and Isaac Norton had become an essential part of that feeling. It was too soon for the emotions stirring within her, she knew that logically. Yet her heart seemed unconcerned with logic, beating a little faster whenever he entered the room. Sunday dawned clear and warm. Olivia spent the morning preparing the store for its reopening, arranging displays, and making lists of items to reorder. Mrs. Landry arrived at noon with a package under her arm. A present, she announced, handing it to Olivia, for your dinner with Mr. Norton. Inside was a dress of deep blue silk, simply cut but elegant, with lace at the cuffs and collar. It was my daughter's, Mrs. Landry explained. Before she moved to San Francisco with her husband, never wore it much, said it was too fine for Chico occasions. But I think tonight calls for something special. Mrs. Landry, I couldn't possibly— Nonsense, the older woman interrupted. It's just gathering dust in my trunk. Besides, all your own things were damaged in the river. Allow an old woman the pleasure of seeing a pretty young lady enjoy a beautiful dress. Touched by the gesture, Olivia accepted the gift. That afternoon, Mrs. Landry helped her bathe and dress, arranging her hair in a simple but elegant style that complemented the dress perfectly. There, Mrs. Landry said, stepping back to survey her work. You look lovely. Mr. Norton won't know what hit him. Isaac arrived promptly at 6, dressed in what was clearly his Sunday best, a dark suit that fit his broad shoulders well, a crisp white shirt, and a string tie. He had trimmed his beard and slicked back his usually unruly hair. When Olivia opened the door, his eyes widened appreciatively. You look beautiful, he said, the simple honesty of the compliment making it all the more affecting. Thank you, she replied. You clean up rather nicely yourself. He offered his arm, and she took it, grateful for the support as they made their way carefully down the stairs and out into the early evening air. The hotel was only a short distance away, and they walked slowly, mindful of Olivia's still healing ankle. The hotel dining room had been transformed for the Sunday dinner service, with white tablecloths and candles on each table. The maitre d' led them to a corner table, slightly removed from the other diners. I took the liberty of making arrangements, Isaac explained as he helped Olivia into her chair. Thought you might appreciate a bit of privacy, given how much attention we've been attracting. Indeed, their entrance had caused heads to turn throughout the room. Olivia was beginning to understand that in a small town like Chico, every action was observed and discussed, especially those involving a newcomer and a well-respected local. The dinner was the finest Olivia had eaten since leaving Boston, a tender roast, fresh vegetables from local farms, and a chocolate cake for dessert. The wine Isaac selected complemented the meal perfectly. As they ate, they talked easily about the store, the town, and their respective pasts. Olivia learned that Isaac had left his home in Pennsylvania at 19, working his way west through a series of jobs on farms and ranches. He spoke with passion about his dream of owning his own ranch someday. The Double Bar's owner is looking to retire in the next year or two, he explained. He's offered to sell to me, but I'm still short on the down payment. Been saving every penny, though. That's admirable, Olivia said sincerely, to have such a clear goal and to work so diligently toward it. What about you? He asked. Did you always want to run a mercantile? She laughed. Hardly. It wasn't even a possibility I could have imagined in Boston. Women there, well, they can own property if they're widowed or unmarried, but running a business is still considered unusual. She traced the rim of her wine glass thoughtfully. But now that I'm here, it feels right. The store is a chance to build something of my own. As the evening progressed, Olivia found herself increasingly drawn to the man across from her. It wasn't just his physical presence, though that certainly affected her, his strong hands, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled, the low timbre of his voice. It was something deeper, a fundamental decency and honesty that seemed rare in a world where most people wore masks of one sort or another. After dinner, they stepped outside into the cool evening air. The stars were emerging in the darkening sky, more brilliant than Olivia had ever seen them in the city. "Would you care for a short walk before I take you home?" Isaac asked. "The town square is pretty at night." Olivia nodded, and they strolled slowly to the small park at the center of Chico. Gas lamps illuminated the paths, casting a warm glow over the benches and flower beds. They found a secluded spot beneath an oak tree, and Isaac helped Olivia settle onto a bench for a moment. They sat in companionable silence, listening to the distant sounds of the town settling into evening. Then Isaac turned to face her, his expression serious. "Olivia, I need to tell you something," he began. "I'm heading back to the Double Bar tomorrow. The cattle drive season's starting, and I'll be gone for at least a month, maybe longer." Though she had known this moment was coming, Olivia couldn't suppress a stab of disappointment. "I understand," she said quietly. "You have your work and I have mine. The thing is," he continued, his voice low and earnest, "I've never felt this way before, about anyone. I know it's fast, we've only known each other a short time, but when I pulled you from that river, it was like I found something I didn't even know I was missing." Olivia's heart raced at his words. "I feel it too," she admitted. "It makes no logical sense. In Boston, a proper courtship would take months, even years, but here," she gestured to the world around them, "everything's different here." "I'm not asking for promises," Isaac said, "just permission to call on you when I return. To see if what we're feeling has a chance to grow into something real." Olivia met his gaze, finding in his eyes the same mixture of hope and uncertainty that churned within her. "I'd like that very much," she replied softly. He reached for her hand, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. "May I write to you while I'm away?" "I'd be disappointed if you didn't," she said with a smile. The walk back to the store was quiet, both of them lost in thought. At her door, Isaac paused, still holding her hand. "Good night, Olivia," he said, his voice husky. "Good night, Isaac," she replied. On impulse, she rose on tiptoe and pressed a soft kiss to his cheek. "Be safe on your journey." His eyes darkened, and for a moment she thought he might pull her into his arms. Instead, he lifted her hand to his lips, kissing it gently before releasing it. "I'll come say goodbye before I leave tomorrow," he promised. True to his word, Isaac appeared at the store early the next morning. Olivia was already downstairs, preparing for the reopening. He was dressed for the trail denim pants, a work shirt, and a weathered leather vest, with his hat pulled low over his eyes. "All set for your big day?" he asked, gesturing to the store around them. "As ready as I'll ever be," she replied, trying to keep her voice light despite the heaviness in her heart at his impending departure. "You'll do fine," he assured her. "You're smarter than half the merchants in California put together," she laughed. "That's hardly a high bar from what I've seen." Their banter felt natural, a shield against the emotion of the moment. Finally, Isaac sighed and checked the pocket watch he carried. "I should go," he said reluctantly. "The boys will be waiting at the ranch." Olivia nodded, suddenly unable to speak past the lump in her throat. "I'll write as soon as we make camp," he promised, "and I'll be thinking of you every day until I return." "And I'll be here," she replied, finding her voice at last. "Running my uncle's store and waiting for your letters." He stepped closer, his eyes searching hers for permission. When she didn't back away, he slowly lowered his head and brushed his lips against hers in a kiss so gentle it was almost reverent. Olivia responded instinctively, her hands coming up to rest on his chest as the kiss deepened, becoming something more urgent, more needy. When they finally parted, both were breathless. Isaac rested his forehead against hers for a moment before stepping back. "That should tide us over until I get back," he said, his voice rough with emotion. And then he was gone, striding out the door with a final tip of his hat, leaving Olivia standing in the middle of her store with the ghost of his kiss still warm on her lips. The month that followed was a whirlwind of activity for Olivia. Reopening the store proved to be both challenging and rewarding. The townspeople of Chico welcomed her warmly, curious about the Eastern woman who had inherited Henry Anderson's business and survived a near drowning in the Sacramento River. Her ankle healed completely, allowing her to work full days in the store. She made some subtle changes, reorganizing displays, adding a section of books and stationery that she ordered from San Francisco, even setting up a small reading corner with a comfortable chair where customers, particularly the wives of ranchers who came to town only occasionally, could rest while their husbands shopped. True to his word, Isaac wrote regularly. His letters, though sometimes brief and clearly written by firelight after long days on the trail, were filled with vivid descriptions of the landscape, amusing anecdotes about his fellow cowhands, and increasingly tender expressions of his feelings for her. Olivia found herself eagerly awaiting each letter, reading and rereading them until the paper grew soft from handling. She wrote back just as faithfully, telling him about the store, the townspeople, and her growing affection for both Chico and its absent cowboy, Mrs. Landry continued to be a steady presence in Olivia's life, stopping by the store almost daily to chat and offering advice about everything from inventory management to dealing with difficult customers. The widow had appointed herself Olivia's unofficial guardian, and Olivia was grateful for both her practical assistance and her friendship. "Any news from your cowboy?" Mrs. Landry would ask whenever she visited, not bothering to hide her interest in the developing romance. "He's not my cowboy," Olivia would reply, though her blush usually betrayed her. "Not yet," Mrs. Landry would say with a knowing smile, "but he will be, mark my words." As the weeks passed, Olivia found herself becoming increasingly integrated into the community. She joined the Ladies' Aid Society, which met weekly to sew quilts for the needy and plan charity events. She attended Sunday services at the small church on the edge of town, where the young pastor, Reverend Walker, delivered thoughtful sermons that often made her reflect on her new life in ways she hadn't expected. She even began giving reading lessons to several of the ranch hands who came into town on their days off. Men who had never had the opportunity for formal education but wanted to improve themselves. The lessons took place in the reading corner of the store after closing hours, and Olivia found the work as satisfying as her teaching had been in Boston. One evening, about 3 weeks after Isaac's departure, Olivia was just closing up the store when Sheriff Mills stopped by. "Evening, Miss Anderson," he greeted her. "Got a minute, of course, Sheriff," she replied, inviting him in. "Is something wrong?" No, he assured her, removing his hat as he stepped inside. "Just wanted to let you know we caught those fellows who have been rustling cattle from the ranches north of town." Olivia had heard about the rustlers from customers who came into the store, a gang that had been stealing livestock from several of the smaller ranches in the area, sometimes resorting to violence when confronted. "That's good news," she said. "Was anyone hurt in the capture?" "That's why I'm here," the sheriff replied, his expression growing more serious. "Thought you should know Isaac Norton was involved in the apprehension." Olivia's heart seemed to stop. "Is he?" "He's alive," the sheriff said quickly, seeing the fear in her eyes. "Took a bullet in the shoulder, but the doctor at the mining camp patched him up. Said Isaac was lucky missed anything vital." Relief washed over her, followed quickly by concern. "Where is he now?" "Still at the camp." The cattle drive was nearby when they spotted the rustlers with some stolen stock. Isaac and a couple of the other hands went after them, managed to hold them until my deputy and I arrived. The sheriff looked uncomfortable. "He asked me to tell you not to worry, said he'd still be back when he promised." Olivia nodded, her mind racing. "Thank you for letting me know, Sheriff." After he left, Olivia closed the store mechanically, her thoughts with Isaac at some distant mining camp, wounded and far from proper medical care. She wished desperately that she could go to him, but she knew it was impossible. The camp was at least 2 days' ride away, and she had no experience with such travel. Nor could she leave the store unattended. That night she wrote him a long letter, pouring out her worry and her wish to be with him. She knew it would likely not reach him before he returned to Chico, but writing helped calm her fears. The following days crawled by, each one stretching endlessly as Olivia waited for news. She threw herself into her work, staying open later and rising earlier, trying to exhaust herself enough that sleep would come without dreams of Isaac bleeding in the dust. It was nearly a week after the sheriff's visit when the bell over the store door jingled late one afternoon. Olivia looked up from the ledger she was updating to see Isaac standing in the doorway, his left arm in a sling, his face leaner and more tanned than when he'd left, but his eyes as warm as she remembered. "Isaac," she exclaimed, dropping her pen and rushing toward him. He met her halfway, his good arm encircling her waist as she carefully embraced him, mindful of his injury. "I missed you," he murmured into her hair. "I was so worried," she replied, pulling back to examine his face. "The sheriff told me you were shot." "It's nothing," he assured her. "Just a graze, really. Doc at the camp fixed me up good as new. I'll be back to full strength in no time." Olivia could see that he was downplaying the injury. The lines of pain around his eyes and the careful way he held himself told a different story, but she didn't challenge him. Instead, she led him to the reading corner and insisted he sit in the comfortable chair. "The drive?" she asked as she perched on a stool beside him. "Finished early," he replied. "The rustlers were the last obstacle, and once they were dealt with, we made good time to the railhead. The boss gave us all bonuses for completing the job ahead of schedule." His eyes brightened. "Which reminds me." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small cloth bag, which he handed to Olivia. Inside, she found a silver brooch shaped like a wildflower with a small pearl at its center. "It's beautiful," she breathed, touching it reverently. "Saw it in a shop at the railhead," Isaac explained. "Reminded me of you, delicate but strong, like those flowers that grow in the most unlikely places along the trail." Olivia was touched by both the gift and the sentiment behind it. "Will you pin it on for me?" she asked. Isaac nodded, taking the brooch from her hand. With surprising deftness for a man with only one good arm, he secured it to the collar of her dress, his fingers brushing against her collarbone in a touch that sent warmth spreading through her. "There," he said softly. "Perfect." Their eyes met, and Olivia saw in his the same longing she felt to close the distance between them, to reclaim the connection they had begun to forge before his departure. But they were in the middle of the store, visible to anyone who might pass by the large front windows. As if reading her thoughts, Isaac glanced toward the door. "What time do you close today?" "In about an hour," she replied. "May I take you to dinner again?" he asked. "To celebrate my return." "I'd like that," she said, "but you should rest first. You look exhausted." He didn't deny it. "Been pushing hard to get back, didn't want to be away from you any longer than necessary." The simple admission warmed her heart. "Go to your lodgings, get some sleep," she urged. "I'll come to you when the store closes, and we can have a quiet dinner in your room if you're not up to going out." Isaac looked like he wanted to object, but a wave of fatigue seemed to overtake him. "Maybe you're right," he conceded. "I'm staying at Mrs. Landry's boarding house. Room at the top of the stairs." After he left, Olivia found it difficult to concentrate on her customers. Her mind kept returning to Isaac, his tired eyes, his wounded arm, the way he had rushed back to her despite his injury. By the time she closed the store, she had made a decision. Rather than going directly to Mrs. Landry's, Olivia stopped at her apartment to change into her best dress, the blue one Mrs. Landry had given her for their first dinner together. She fixed her hair, pinned Isaac's brooch to her collar, and then headed to the hotel restaurant where she arranged for a meal to be prepared and delivered to the boarding house. Mrs. Landry greeted her with a knowing smile when she arrived. "He's sleeping," the widow said quietly. "Poor man looked dead on his feet when he came in, but I reckon he'd want to be woken for your visit." Olivia followed Mrs. Landry upstairs to Isaac's room. The older woman knocked softly, then let herself in when there was no response. Isaac was indeed asleep, stretched out on the narrow bed, still fully clothed except for his boots. Even in sleep, his injured arm was cradled protectively against his chest. Mrs. Landry stepped back. "I'll leave you to wake him," she whispered. "The hotel boy should be along with your dinner soon." "I'll send him up when he arrives." After the widow left, Olivia stood for a moment watching Isaac sleep. The lines of pain and fatigue that had marked his face in the store were smoothed out now, making him look younger and more vulnerable. Her heart swelled with tenderness at the sight. Gently, she sat on the edge of the bed and touched his good shoulder. "Isaac," she called softly. His eyes opened immediately, alert despite his exhaustion. When he saw her, his face relaxed into a smile. "Olivia," he murmured, his voice rough with sleep. "Sorry, I meant to clean up before you came." "Don't apologize," she said. "You needed the rest." She helped him sit up, arranging pillows behind him for support. "I've ordered dinner from the hotel. It should be here soon." True to her word, the hotel's delivery boy arrived a few minutes later with a tray laden with covered dishes, which Olivia arranged on the small table near the window. The meal was simpler than their previous dinner at the hotel: roast chicken, potatoes, and fresh vegetables, but the aromas were enticing. Isaac insisted on getting up to join her at the table, though Olivia could see it cost him some effort. They ate slowly, talking about the events of their time apart. Isaac described the cattle drive in vivid detail, painting pictures with his words of vast open spaces, star-filled nights, and the camaraderie of the trail. "And the rustlers?" Olivia asked when he seemed to be avoiding the subject. A shadow crossed his face. 4 of them, hitting the smaller spreads where they thought resistance would be minimal. "We caught them red-handed with a dozen head of double-bar cattle." "The sheriff said you were instrumental in their capture," she prompted when he fell silent. Isaac shrugged, wincing slightly as the movement jarred his injured shoulder. "Was just doing what needed doing. They fired first, gave us no choice but to shoot back." His eyes met hers. "I'm not proud of the violence, Olivia, but I couldn't let them escape to hurt more people." She reached across the table to take his hand. "I understand, and I'm proud of you, not for the fighting, but for standing up for what's right, even at risk to yourself." After dinner, they moved to the small settee near the window. The evening had grown cool, and Isaac built a small fire in the room's pot-bellied stove, its warm glow casting dancing shadows on the walls. Sitting close beside him, Olivia felt a sense of rightness, as if the weeks of separation had only confirmed what she had begun to suspect the day he pulled her from the river, that this man was somehow meant to be part of her life. "I missed you every day," Isaac said quietly, his arm around her shoulders. "Thought about you constantly. The boys teased me something fierce about mooning over your letters." Olivia smiled, leaning into his embrace. "I missed you too. The store kept me busy, but the days still seemed long without your visits." He turned slightly to face her, his expression serious. "Olivia, I know it's still early days for us, but these weeks away, they've only strengthened what I was beginning to feel before I left." He paused, seeming to search for the right words. "I'm not a wealthy man, and the ranch I hope to buy is still more dream than reality, but if you could see your way clear to consider a future with me someday, I'd count myself the luckiest man alive." The earnestness in his voice touched her deeply. "Isaac, when I came to Chico, I thought I was simply claiming an inheritance, a business, a building. I never expected to find someone like you." She met his gaze steadily. "I don't need wealth or grand promises. What I've seen of your character, your courage, your kindness, your integrity tells me everything I need to know." Hope dawned in his eyes. "Are you saying?" "I'm saying that I'm falling in love with you, Isaac Norton," Olivia replied softly. "And if you're asking for time to court me properly, then my answer is yes." His smile was radiant as he pulled her closer. "I'm definitely falling in love with you, Olivia Anderson," he murmured before his lips found hers in a kiss that held all the longing of their weeks apart. When they finally parted, both breathless, Isaac rested his forehead against hers. "I should take you home," he said reluctantly. "Mrs. Landry will have my hide if I keep you here much longer. She's appointed herself your protector, you know." Olivia laughed softly. "I know. She interrogates me about your letters every time she visits the store. I think she's already planning our wedding." "Smart woman," Isaac replied with a grin, though I hope she'll allow us a proper courtship first. The courtship that followed over the next months was indeed proper by Western standards, if somewhat accelerated compared to Eastern traditions. Isaac divided his time between his duties at the double bar and helping Olivia with improvements to the store. Together, they expanded the inventory, added a small pharmacy section under the guidance of Dr. Wilson, and even installed a telegraph machine that connected Chico to Sacramento and San Francisco. The business thrived under Olivia's management, attracting customers from the surrounding ranches and farms who appreciated both the quality of goods and the fair prices. Isaac's knowledge of the community proved invaluable, helping Olivia understand the needs of her clientele and anticipate seasonal demands. Their romance blossomed alongside their business partnership. Isaac took Olivia on picnics by the river, well upstream from the collapsed bridge, which the town council had finally replaced with a sturdy new structure, taught her to ride a gentle mare he purchased specifically for her, and introduced her to the beauty of the California wilderness surrounding Chico. Olivia, in turn, shared her love of literature with Isaac, reading aloud to him in the evenings from her favorite books. She expanded his knowledge of business practices, teaching him double-entry bookkeeping and inventory management, skills he knew would be valuable when he finally acquired his own ranch. By late summer, their intentions toward one another were clear to everyone in Chico. When Isaac formally proposed on a warm August evening beneath the oak tree where they had first acknowledged their feelings, no one was surprised, least of all Olivia, who accepted without hesitation. They were married in October 1873, just 6 months after the wagon accident that had brought them together. The ceremony took place in the town church, with Reverend Walker officiating and what seemed like the entire population of Chico in attendance. Mrs. Landry wept openly throughout the service, proudly claiming credit for their romance. If I hadn't given you that blue dress for your first dinner together, who knows what might have happened? She told Olivia during the reception, which was held in the town square under a canopy of autumn leaves. For their honeymoon, they traveled to San Francisco, where Isaac had never been and where Olivia had visited only briefly on her journey west. They spent a glorious week exploring the growing city, attending the theater, dining in fine restaurants, and walking along the bay, all while getting to know each other in the intimate way that marriage allowed. Upon their return to Chico, they moved into the apartment above the store, which Olivia had renovated and expanded during the summer. Isaac continued working at the double bar, saving diligently for his dream of ranch ownership while helping at the store whenever he could. Their partnership, both personal and professional, proved remarkably successful. By the spring of 1874, Anderson's General Store, now officially Norton's Mercantile, though many old-timers still used the former name, was the most prosperous business in Chico. Olivia's innovations, particularly the addition of mail order services for items not regularly stocked, had expanded their customer base beyond the immediate area. In May, exactly 1 year after their first meeting, Isaac came home with momentous news. "He's ready to sell," he announced as he burst into the store, referring to the owner of the double bar. "And he's offering terms I can meet with what we've saved." Olivia's heart soared at the joy in her husband's face. "That's wonderful, Isaac. When would we take possession?" "Next month, if all goes well with the paperwork," he replied, lifting her off her feet in an exuberant embrace. "Olivia, it's really happening. The ranch, the cattle, the house, all of it. The prospect of moving to the ranch presented a new challenge: what to do with the store." After much discussion, they decided that rather than selling the business they had built together, they would hire a manager to handle day-to-day operations while Olivia oversaw the accounts and ordering from the ranch. It wasn't an ideal arrangement, but it would allow them to maintain ownership of the profitable enterprise while pursuing Isaac's dream. The transition wasn't without difficulties. The first manager they hired proved unreliable, forcing Olivia to make frequent trips into town to address problems. The ranch demanded Isaac's full attention, especially in the early months as he established his authority with the hands and made improvements to the property. But by autumn, they had settled into a workable routine. 3 days each week, Olivia rode into Chico to check on the store, now efficiently managed by a retired schoolteacher named Margaret Collins. The remaining time, she dedicated herself to making the ranch house a true home and learning the business of cattle ranching from Isaac. Their first winter as ranch owners was harsh, with heavy snows isolating them for weeks at a time. But the cozy house, with its crackling fireplace and well-stocked pantry, became a haven for them. In the evenings, they would sit before the fire, Olivia reading aloud while Isaac cleaned tack or carved small wooden figures, a hobby he had recently developed. It was during one of these quiet evenings, as the wind howled outside and snow piled against the windows, that Olivia shared her suspicion that they would be welcoming a new member to their family by the following summer. Isaac's reaction, a mixture of joy, pride, and tender concern, only confirmed what Olivia already knew: that this man who had once risked his life to save a stranger from a river would be the most devoted of fathers. Their son, Henry Isaac Norton, was born on a perfect June day in 1875 with Dr. Wilson making the journey from Chico specifically for the birth. The baby was robust and healthy, with his father's hazel eyes and his mother's determined chin. "He's perfect," Isaac whispered, cradling his newborn son with hands that could break a wild horse, but treated this tiny life with infinite gentleness. Mrs. Landry, who had insisted on coming to help with the birth and stayed on afterward to assist the new parents, pronounced the child the most beautiful baby ever born in Butte County and immediately began planning his future. "He'll be a rancher like his father," she declared confidently. But with his mother's brains for business, life settled into a new rhythm with Henry's arrival. The store in town continued to prosper under Margaret's competent management, requiring less of Olivia's attention. The ranch flourished under Isaac's leadership, its herd growing and its reputation for quality stock spreading throughout the region. As Henry grew from infant to toddler, the Norton household expanded again with the arrival of a daughter, Elizabeth Rose, in the spring of 1877. The family was complete, or so they thought, until twins James and Sarah surprised them in 1880, turning their quiet home into a bustling, joy-filled haven of childhood energy. Through the years, Isaac and Olivia's partnership deepened. Each challenge they faced: droughts, economic downturns, illnesses, only strengthening the bond that had begun that day at the river. They worked side by side, raising their children, building their businesses, and creating a legacy that would endure long after them. Sometimes, on summer evenings when the children were finally asleep, they would sit on the porch of their ranch house, watching the stars emerge in the vast California sky. Isaac would take Olivia's hand, his touch still sending the same thrill through her as it had that first day. "Do you ever think about how different our lives might have been if that bridge hadn't collapsed?" she would ask, and he would always reply with the simple honesty that was his hallmark: "I reckon some things are just meant to be, no matter what path gets you there." On their 25th wedding anniversary, their children now grown and helping run the family enterprises, Isaac surprised Olivia with a journey back to the spot where they had first met. The old bridge was long gone, replaced years ago with a solid structure of iron and stone. The river flowed peacefully beneath it, giving no hint of the drama it had once witnessed. Standing on the bank, looking out over the water that had nearly claimed her life but had instead given her a love beyond measure, Olivia felt a profound sense of gratitude. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" Isaac asked, his arm around her waist, his hair now streaked with silver but his eyes still bright with the same warmth that had captured her heart all those years ago. "For diving in," she replied simply. "For not letting me go." He turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "I never could have done anything else," he said, "and I never will." As they shared a kiss beside the river that had brought them together, Olivia reflected that life, like the Sacramento, had its dangerous currents and unexpected turns. But with the right companion by your side, even the most perilous journey could lead to the safest harbor. In the years that followed, the Norton family continued to thrive. The ranch expanded, absorbing neighboring properties when they became available. The mercantile in Chico evolved into a department store managed by Elizabeth, who had inherited her mother's head for business. Henry took over the ranch operations, implementing modern techniques he had learned at an agricultural college in Sacramento. While the twins found their own paths, James as a lawyer in San Francisco, and Sarah as a teacher at Chico's first proper school. Isaac and Olivia gradually stepped back from day-to-day management, content to serve as advisors to their children while enjoying the fruits of their decades of labor. They traveled occasionally to San Francisco to visit James, to Yellowstone Park, and even once to Boston, where Olivia showed Isaac the city of her youth. But they always returned to the ranch outside Chico, to the home they had built together, to the life that had begun with a bridge collapse, a sinking wagon, and a brave dive into dangerous waters. And on quiet evenings, they would still sit on their porch, hands intertwined, watching the sun set over the California hills, grateful for the river that had tried to separate them but had instead bound them together for a lifetime.